The sky changed first. It did not turn dark or red. It became wrong. David Miller noticed it while flying his small relief plane over the coast. The clouds stood still, frozen like paint. Then the light bent in strange lines as if the air itself was breaking. His radio filled with noise, not words, just sharp sounds that made his head ache. Seconds later, the first ships appeared. They were huge, silent shapes, wider than cities. They did not come down slowly. They simply were there, as if they had always been hiding behind the sky. Bright lines fell from them. Not bombs. Not fire. Something cleaner and colder. Buildings vanished. Roads split open. Towers folded inward like paper. David turned his plane hard to the left. His hands shook, but his training held. He had flown into storms, wars, and earthquakes before. This was worse. Below him, a city he had landed in many times was gone in minutes. No warning sirens. No defense fire. Just silence and light. Across the world the same thing happened. Governments tried to speak, but lines were jammed. Old rivals blamed each other. Some leaders thought it was a trick, a secret weapon from another nation. Others froze, unable to believe it was real. Military plans written over decades failed in seconds. Missiles could not lock on. Radar could not see clearly. Nothing behaved as it should. David landed on a broken road outside the city. Smoke drifted like fog. People ran with burned clothes and wide eyes. Some screamed. Some said nothing at all. He did not wait for orders. He opened his plane, pulled out emergency kits, and began helping. He carried children. He guided the injured. He did what he had always done. Above them another light fell. The ground shook. David threw himself over a woman and a boy. The sound came late, like the world was slow to feel pain. When he looked up again, half the horizon was gone. News spread fast even as systems failed. Short messages. Broken videos. A city in Europe erased. Ports in Asia gone. Power grids in Africa silent. No place was spared. The ships moved with calm purpose. They did not chase. They did not threaten. They simply removed. In underground labs and hidden bunkers, scientists worked without sleep. One group managed to study a signal leaking from the alien ships. It was not language as humans knew it, but patterns. Cold, perfect patterns. After hours of fear and argument, the meaning became clear. The aliens were not here to rule. They were here to finish humanity. There were no plans for prisoners. No plans for control. Earth was marked for extinction like a failed experiment. When this truth reached world leaders, something broke inside many of them. Some still argued. Some demanded surrender. But surrender meant nothing to a species that did not want obedience, only silence. Fear changed shape. At first it was panic. People ran. Stores emptied. Faith was lost. But as days passed and the attacks continued, fear became something else. People saw that hiding alone did not work. Borders did not protect. Flags did not stop the sky from opening. David moved from place to place, flying low when he could, driving when he could not. He joined groups of strangers without question. A nurse from a destroyed hospital worked beside a farmer who had never left his land. A soldier took orders from a civilian who knew the roads better. Old insults and old hate felt small when the sky itself wanted them dead. Messages began to change. Not orders. Requests. Offers. One country shared satellite access. Another opened food stores to all. Military channels merged. There was still confusion, still fear, but something new was forming beneath it. A shared truth. Humanity could not survive as pieces. Late one night, David sat near a fire with people he had met that day. No one spoke much. Above them the stars looked the same, and that felt strange. He wondered how many more nights there would be. Somewhere far away, leaders were finally listening to each other. Scientists were sharing data without holding back. The world was still burning, but for the first time, it was facing the fire together. David did not know if it would be enough. But for the first time since the sky broke, he believed it was the only chance. The second week felt longer than the first. Attacks came closer together now, like a slow drumbeat turning fast. Cities that had survived the first wave were hit next. Oceans no longer felt wide. Borders no longer mattered. The sky did not care where one country ended and another began. Inside a deep concrete room beneath an old data center, Emma Wright stared at a wall of broken screens. She had not gone home in days. Her hair was tied back without care. Coffee sat untouched beside her. The room smelled of heat and tired people. Emma was a systems engineer. Before the invasion, she worked on network safety, helping banks and hospitals stay online. Her job had been about protection and order. Now it was about survival. Every nation had built its defense systems alone. Different codes, different rules, different pride. They were never meant to touch. When the aliens arrived, those systems failed one by one. Missiles launched too late. Drones lost signals. Satellites refused to talk to each other. At first, leaders argued about control. Who would lead? Whose system would be used? Whose rules would apply? While they argued, another city vanished. That ended the debate. Orders came fast and without ceremony. Share everything. Codes, maps, weapons access, command lines. Old secrets that had been guarded for decades were opened in hours. It was messy, dangerous, necessary. Emma stood at the center of that mess. She worked with engineers she had never met, speaking different languages, using different tools. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes they failed. Screens went black. Systems crashed. Once, an entire defense grid shut down for 6 minutes. In those 6 minutes, thousands died. Emma did not cry. She logged the failure and tried again. The aliens watched. Their probes circled Earth, silent and patient. Their models predicted collapse. They expected humans to fight each other once fear grew too large. They expected pride to break cooperation. That had always been the pattern with intelligent species. But the pattern did not hold. Emma helped build something new, not from one system, but from many. It was not clean or perfect. It was patched together with quick code and shared trust. One nation's radar filled the blind spot of another. Old enemy fleets now shared targets. Pilots flew using maps written by people they once trained to fight. Every failure taught a lesson. When a defense failed, humans changed it the same day. When a plan failed, they threw it away without shame. No one cared who was right yesterday. Only what worked today mattered. Emma spoke to commanders without rank standing between them. She spoke to soldiers and civilians the same way. Clear, direct, honest. When she did not know something, she said so. Others did the same. Pride became too heavy to carry. Across the world, people felt the change. News feeds showed joint fleets flying side by side. Old flags were still there but smaller now. Messages stopped blaming and started asking. Can you cover this zone? Can you spare power? Can you share fuel? On the ground, trust grew in quiet ways. Refugees were moved across borders without question. Doctors treated anyone they could reach. Engineers shared fixes openly, even when they were rough and unfinished. The aliens struck again, harder this time. They targeted the new networks. Signals bent. False data flooded systems. For a moment, chaos threatened. Emma watched warning lights bloom across the screens like fire. She took a breath. Shut the clean systems down, she said. Switch to the messy ones. Sounded wrong. Clean systems were safe. Ordered. But they were predictable. The messy systems were human-made in a hurry. They changed daily. Sometimes hourly. They were full of mistakes and shortcuts. But they could change fast. Engineers around the world followed the call. They rerouted signals through civilian networks, old satellites, even ground stations built for weather reports. Nothing followed a neat path anymore. The alien interference missed half its targets. For the first time, a major attack failed to erase a city. Damage was heavy. Lives were lost. But the city stood. In a silent observation chamber far above Earth, alien analysts paused. Their projections no longer lined up. Humans were not becoming simpler under pressure. They were becoming harder to predict. Emma leaned back in her chair when the alerts faded. Her hands hurt. Her eyes burned. Around her, people smiled without energy, just relief. No cheers. No speeches. They all knew this was only a moment. Still, something had changed. Trust was no longer a choice. It was a habit. Later, Emma walked through the hall outside the control room. She passed soldiers sleeping on the floor beside engineers. She passed messages written in many languages on the walls. Notes of thanks. Warnings. Simple jokes. She stopped near a small screen showing Earth from orbit. Scars of light marked destroyed cities. But between them, lines of movement showed supply routes, shared defenses, shared effort. The world was still breaking. But it was breaking together. Emma rested her hand on the wall and allowed herself one quiet thought. The aliens believed humans would fall apart. They believed pride would win. They were wrong. Humans were learning. And learning, Emma knew, was the one thing no model could fully control. The warning came too late. Across the planet, sensors flashed at once. Not single ships this time, but waves. The alien fleets moved together, perfect and silent. Their light filled the upper sky like a second dawn. This was not another test. It was an ending. Then the world went quiet. Satellites failed first. Long-range radios died seconds later. Screens froze. Commands cut off mid-sentence. The shared networks Emma had helped build blinked and went dark. For a moment, Earth stood blind and deaf beneath the alien shadow. The aliens expected panic. Instead, the world broke into motion. Without orders, people acted. In hospitals, doctors kept working as power failed. They moved patients by hand. They shared tools. They trusted memory when machines went silent. In cities, firefighters and volunteers guided crowds through smoke and falling glass. Soldiers took directions from local leaders who knew the streets. No one waited for permission. David Miller was on the ground when the strike began. He had landed near a coastal city already damaged by earlier attacks. His plane was low on fuel. He planned to leave at first light. Then the sky lit up, and the sea pulled back as if afraid. The ground shook hard enough to knock people down. David did not look up. He looked around. Thousands were trapped between the city ruins and the shore. The main road was gone. The port burned. Panic rose like heat. David felt it too, sharp and fast, but training pushed it aside. "Move inland," he shouted. "Not all at once. Follow me." No one asked who he was. He climbed onto a broken truck and pointed. He remembered old maps. Service tunnels. Drain paths. He had flown over this place many times. He jumped down and ran, trusting others would follow. They did. A nurse grabbed a stretcher. A fisherman lifted a child. A soldier with no radio took the lead at narrow points. They moved through smoke and dust, guided by hand signals and shouted warnings. Above them, light fell again. Buildings vanished behind them, close enough to feel the heat. The air screamed. People stumbled but kept moving. When someone fell, 3 hands pulled them up. No one stopped for long. David reached an old tunnel entrance, half buried. It was never meant for people. It was meant for water. He did not hesitate. "Inside," he said. The tunnel filled fast. It was dark and wet. Fear pressed in. Someone began to cry. David moved forward, counting steps, remembering turns. He had once landed nearby after a storm and walked this route to help a flooded village. Memory became the map. For hours they moved. When the tunnel ended, they emerged miles away, in open land scarred but standing. Thousands were alive because no one waited. Elsewhere, the same story unfolded. A schoolteacher organized an evacuation using chalk and walls when phones died. A mechanic turned old buses into shelters. A doctor performed surgery by lantern light. A small town guided refugees through forests using songs to stay together in the dark. The aliens watched all of it. Their strike should have shattered command. Their models said loss of communication meant loss of coordination. But humans did not stop when the center failed. They became many centers at once. Worse, they changed faster than expected. When one escape path failed, humans made another. When one defense fell, they did not freeze. They moved. They adapted. Desperation did not narrow their choices. It widened them. In orbit, alien observers adjusted projections again and again. Each update failed within hours. Human behavior shifted too quickly. Too many small decisions. Too much shared purpose without shared control. The decisive strike slowed. Not because Earth resisted with power, but because it refused to collapse. As the sky dimmed slightly, fragments of communication returned. Short signals. Broken words. Enough. Emma Wright sat in a silent control room when one screen flickered back to life. It showed scattered local feeds. No global order. Just reports of survival. Evacuations. Shelters holding. Cities damaged but not erased. She let out a breath she had been holding for days. Far inland, David stood on a hill at dawn. Smoke marked the horizon. The group he led rested behind him, wrapped in blankets, alive. He did not feel like a hero. He felt tired. But when a child smiled at him, something steady filled his chest. The aliens pulled back slightly, not retreating but pausing. For the first time, uncertainty entered their records. Humans were not strongest when prepared. They were strongest when forced to choose together, without time, without orders, without fear stopping them. The flaw was clear now. Desperation did not break humanity. It made them faster. The world did not recover. It adjusted. After the Great Strike, nothing returned to normal. Fuel was scarce. Power came and went. Factories stood quiet. The old systems that once fed cities no longer worked the same way. Humanity did not rebuild them as they were. There was no time for that. Plans changed every day. Sometimes every hour. No single nation gave orders. No world leader spoke for everyone. The attempts had failed before. Instead, people shared what worked and dropped what did not. Leadership moved like a current, flowing to whoever had answers in that moment. Emma Wright worked from a small room lit by a single window. Most of the screens were gone now. She used paper, chalk, and simple devices built from spare parts. She no longer designed complex networks. Complexity broke too easily. She designed tools anyone could use. Simple radios made from old parts. Signal codes based on light and sound. Maps that showed safe routes, water points, and shelter zones. Nothing required special training. Nothing depended on one person. Emma shared everything freely. So did others. Across continents, communities learned from one another. A village in the mountains shared a way to hide heat signatures using soil and water. A coastal town taught inland cities how to track alien ship shadows by cloud movement. Farmers shared food-growing methods that worked without power. Doctors taught emergency care using everyday tools. Defense no longer meant standing armies alone. It meant neighbors watching the sky together. When alien drones appeared, warnings spread by drums, bells, and coded lights. When attacks came, people moved fast and calmly. Shelters were rough but effective. Evacuations followed paths that changed often, confusing alien scans. The aliens grew frustrated. Their commanders met in silent chambers, reviewing data that refused to settle. Every time a pattern formed, humans broke it. Every time a weakness was found, it vanished days later. Human technology is inferior, one commander observed. Then why do they persist? Another asked. They increased pressure. They changed attack angles. They targeted supply lines, then shelters, then open land. Humanity responded by shifting again. Cities emptied before strikes. Decoys appeared where no one lived. Real shelters stayed quiet and hidden. Emma received reports through runners and short signals. No central hub. No master plan. Just thousands of shared choices. One day, a system she helped design failed badly. A warning signal came late. A small town was hit. Lives were lost. Emma sat alone that night, holding the paper map in her hands. Guilt pressed hard. The next morning, she shared the failure openly. Others adjusted the design the same day. No blame followed. Only change. Unity did not mean perfection. It meant honesty. David Miller traveled with relief convoys now. Planes were rare. Roads were broken. He walked more than he flew. He helped train others not to follow him but to lead when needed. He taught memory-based navigation. How to read land. How to make decisions with incomplete knowledge. He saw the same thing everywhere. People no longer waited for rescue. They rescued each other. Children carried messages. Elders shared stories that became lessons. Old rival regions traded without counting debts. Survival erased pride faster than any speech ever had. Above Earth, alien commanders argued. Some demanded total force. Others warned of loss. Their predictions contradicted each other. Human behavior created too many small variables. Too many local choices that did not scale neatly. One commander reviewed a simple human message intercepted from a short-range signal. It was not a threat. It was a guide on how to purify water using cloth and heat. The commander paused longer than necessary. Humanity was not winning through power. It was refusing to lose through unity. Emma stood outside one evening watching the sky. Fewer lights fell now. The aliens still watched. Still tested. But their certainty was gone. She could feel it in the quiet. The world was poor in resources but rich in connection. Technology helped but it no longer ruled. Trust moved faster than machines. Shared purpose spread without wires. Emma thought of the old world with its borders and pride. It felt distant now, like a story from another age. Humanity was no longer many voices arguing. It was many hands working. And that, the aliens were learning too late, was a weapon they could not predict. The sky cleared slowly as if it needed time to remember how to be empty. For days, alien ships held their distance. They no longer pressed forward. Their movements became careful, wide, uncertain. Attacks stopped without warning. No light fell. No cities vanished. At first, humanity did not celebrate. Silence had learned how to lie. Then the ships began to leave. One by one, the massive shapes folded into the dark and vanished beyond sight. Sensors that still worked tracked them pulling back, far from Earth's reach. No final strike came. No message followed. The alien fleets retreated. Far above the planet, their final records were written. The words were cold and exact, but the meaning was clear. Humanity was marked as unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. Not because of weapons or power, but because humans refused to behave as expected. Choice broke every model. Unity under pressure made extinction too costly. Earth was no longer worth the risk. On the ground, the world stood still, unsure how to breathe again. Slowly, people stepped outside. They looked up. The sky was blue. At night, stars returned without shadows between them. For the first time since the invasion, the darkness belonged only to space. Rebuilding did not begin with great plans. It began with small acts. People cleared roads by hand. They shared food without counting. Temporary shelters became schools. Broken buildings became meeting places. Borders remained on old maps but not in daily life. David Miller walked through a quiet town that had once been a shelter zone. Children ran between tents, laughing in a way that felt almost strange. Someone had painted letters on a wall using leftover color. A school had reopened. David stopped and watched. He remembered carrying children through smoke, their faces silent with fear. Now they chased each other, arguing about games, not survival. A teacher rang a small bell and the children gathered, still noisy, still alive. David felt something loosen inside him. He had not saved the world. He knew that. No single person had. But he had helped when it mattered and others had done the same. That was enough. Far away, Emma Wright stood on a rooftop at night. The city below her was quiet but growing. Lights were uneven, powered by shared grids and simple generators. It was not the old city. It was something new. She looked up. The sky was clear. No ships. No false stars. Just space. Emma thought of the system she once built, full of rules and limits. They had failed when control mattered more than people. What survived was simpler. Trust. Sharing. The willingness to change. She smiled softly. Messages still moved across the world, but they were different now. They shared building plans, crop methods, teaching guides. No nation claimed credit. No leader stood above the rest. Humanity had learned what mattered too deeply to forget it quickly. The scars remained. Empty spaces where cities once stood. Names carved into stone. Stories passed quietly from one person to another. Loss was part of the new world. So was hope. In distant space, alien observers watched Earth shrink as they moved away. Their archives closed with one final note. Humanity was not to be approached again. Not because it was strongest, but because it could change together. Back on Earth, the night passed without fear. The world had been united by the edge of extinction. It remained united by choice. Humanity survived not by standing above one another, but by standing side by side. And under a quiet, open sky, the future began.